New Level Cap podcast is a show about fun, friends, game design, and all things otherwise. Your hosts are Marco DeSantos and Brad Telton of Level 99 Games. I'm Chris Solis, your producer, and without further ado, please enjoy the show.
Well, Mystery Seller, welcome back. You're here to proprietize our wonderful wares. If you have the money and time, we have the lore and rhyme. Welcome to the New Level Cap podcast. It is I, the Mystery Seller. With me is a very special peddler of the stories and the like.
Julian Kulik.
Julian, you should have made... Julian.
Yes.
We went over this. You need a voice.
A voice, like a voice. What?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like a voice for your story peddler character.
What? This is Julian Kulik. I don't know what accent I'm doing, but I'm doing an accent, and I'm probably offending someone. So there's that.
How can you offend someone if you're not even doing an accent? You're just doing a weird voice.
I don't know. It's vaguely British, vaguely Australian, vaguely...
Here's the real question, right? If it's every accent rolled into one mega accent, is that offending no one or offending everyone?
Oh, absolutely everyone.
Oh, okay. So let's just create fake accents like this one. Woohoo! This is my ghost accent. Is that still called an accent? Is just making your voice sound reverby and spooky an accent?
Yeah, it's like you said, it is a ghost accent, and I would look out and make sure that no ghosts were offended, lest they take out their supernatural vengeance on you.
That's true. I do think that offending any ghosts is the starting plot line to every horror movie ever. So let's not do that, and instead let's talk about the New Level Cap podcast. Listener, we have a very special episode for you today. You might be wondering where Brad Delicious is, or Brad Talton, president of Level 99 Games, overlord of ours. Us? Ours? Overlord of ours? Does that make grammatical sense? Hey, Julian, you're a writer. Does that make grammatical sense?
I think it's fine. It's just crass. So...
that's great. That's great. I'm a very crass person, as anybody who's listened to this podcast will know. So, Brad's not here because, well, we're going to spend this episode talking to Julian about lore bits, because this is the Level 99 Games Fan Mailbag Extravaganza. I'm going to call it that every time, but it's just going to be the mailbag. So on this special kind of episode, we're going to take some questions from all of you that you've been giving us through the appropriate Google form link. So if you have some burning questions for me, Brad, any of our employees, or, of course, just about any of our games, do put it in the form, which I'll link in the comment description below. So if you have some questions, send them in and we might do another mailbag episode. For this one, we picked out a lot of lore questions for all of you. So, in that sense, we just had to bring Julian on because Julian is Lore Master General.
Yeah, I'm been picking up lore and story planning. I'm not sure if my official title is creative director yet, but I've been doing a lot of work on the Grand Chronicle, getting both the plot together and directing a good deal of the art that's coming down the pipe for it. Some of which, if you've seen one of the most recent updates for Devastation Unleashed, had like a good number, had like at least 4 of the pieces that we are working on.
Each for the major storylines, right?
Yeah, Sinlair has been doing a lot of the kind of action pieces, and there's Show's Art is the artist that's working on a lot of the kind of environmental pieces. So
I see.
Well,
Julian, with that in mind, let's get into it. So I'll ask you some questions to set the groundwork, right? What is the World of Indines about? What is the core ethos of the World of Indines? If that makes any sense. If that question makes any sense to you.
That is actually a question I can answer, because Brad has kind of put forth some core values behind how it should feel, and what we're trying to kind of put forth when we do Indines products. It's really kind of is aimed at kind of celebrating to some extent like individual identities. You'll notice we have a lot of different characters that are very, very different, and we're definitely aiming for a fairly diverse cast of characters, not only just in appearance and species or the like, but also in their viewpoints. But also with the idea of a lot of them having to come together to overcome their various trials, and not people who kind of like go it alone are usually
the bad ones.
Yeah, usually.
Like the Dragon Queen who wanted to resurrect someone and rule the world, and
yeah, basically if you
like
aren't
this.
listening to anybody else, it's usually a bad sign.
Hey, Julian, so would you say that a lot of the characters in Indines are each the anime protagonists of their own story?
Yeah, I remember that line from Brad, but yeah, it's very much just kind of like trying to make each character important in their own way and making sure that they have their own little stories to tell.
So there's no such thing as a side character in Indines, so to speak. Right? Like everyone is kind of built to be a main character.
Right, yeah. No, everybody's potentially a main character. We may or may not get around to that with every single character, but we like the idea that there are stories to be told, whether they're ours or whether they're fan fiction. However people want to, maybe a role-playing game at some point.
Yeah, that's something I really want to express, right? Because in Indines, there's no such thing as generic Shopkeeper A, right? Even generic Shopkeeper A is some weird dryad with a mushroom for a head, right?
Yeah, and you can be that, or you have ideas like Wild Magic, where a lot of people have unique talents. And they may not be the kind of like superpowers that save the world, but they have, their own little tricks, their own little magic to them that's unique to them. And so characters tend to be unique.
There's a reason why we call them special snowflakes. Because they are. Each and every single one of them is unique. Yeah. Are there any other core values to the Indines universe?
One of the big things that we try and push is that evil is really a choice. If you're out becoming a villain, you're becoming a villain of your own actions, that there isn't like a specific species or type of magic or plane that's inherently evil. This is something that I've been thinking about a lot, just because it's been bouncing around a lot, at least in the RPG community, is questions of evil races in games and what that means for people who are marginalized, and how that reflects for, them experiencing that kind of story element. So we really are trying to, there are some groups that may seem clearly evil, but that's not necessarily as clear cut when you get the details. So
I mean, at the end of the day, right, Indines kind of like subverts that in a way, because the way it works is that there's like a place called Gesselheim where all the quote-unquote monstrous people are.
Yeah, it's very much like your standard kind of spooky undead kind of kingdom.
Yeah, with zombies and werewolves and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you see all the characters from this place, it's just like, they're just people.
Yeah.
like the ghost character, all she wants to do is put on plays for people.
Yep.
Or the werewolf characters, all they want to do is really just live on their lives and break this weird curse that's on them. And not even the curse. The curse isn't even the fact that they are werewolves. No. The curse is just the fact that they can't be werewolves at the same time because they're twins and only one of them can be a wolf and only one of them can be a human at the same time. Like it's weird because you look at the other kingdom, right? The typical King Arthur medieval kingdom, Jeffries, and then you think, oh, there must be the upstart shining kingdom and stuff. But then you start hearing about the stuff they do, and Jeffries just sounds like a huge jerk all the time, because all they ever want to do is make sure that Gesselheim is continuously oppressed every single moment. But like Gesselheim people are just like, Can you not?
Well, of course, Jeffries also does a lot of does good things as well. They are the heaviest spores of the Planestalkers, which are pretty much one of the only things standing between threats from other planes and Indines. So there's a mix of things going on. There are a lot of good folks working for Jeffries. It's just that they have some folks there have some really old prejudices that
Yeah, I think one really cool dynamic we have to show is the Virions and the Rasps, right?
Yeah.
Because, so what are Virions, for example?
Virions are essentially, they look like classical angels for the most part, to varying degrees of humanity, but they are basically just focused around kind of promoting what would be seen as positive emotions in order to basically farm them for their own needs. And so they're in theory beneficial, but they have a viewpoint and they can have a lack of a moral dimension at times as far as achieving that end goes. So it depends on the individual Virion, and similarly
Rasps
are, essentially the opposite, that they feed off of fear and hatred and things like that, but they don't necessarily need to cause direct harm in doing so. And the question of how much, either Virions or Rasps actually need of these things hasn't been strictly defined, but there are certainly Virions that are bad and Rasps that are largely benevolent. So,
like, whether or not you view the race of Rasps or the race of Virions as good or evil is really just dependent on you as a person, right? Because if you look at the Virions and go like, oh, they must be good because their final effects are good, you kind of ignore the fact that a lot of Virions do really sketchy things just to reach those ends, right?
Yeah.
Like, you forget that sometimes Virions will outright kill other people just so that, they're like, oh, this person's oppressing this village, so if we just kill this person, that village will be happier, and therefore we'll get more happy points. And these happy points are what we need to give to the higher-ups so that they'll be happy with my work, right? Like, because essentially a Virion does good things not because of the goodness of their own heart. A large majority of the time, it's because it's their job to do so, right? They don't really willingly do it. They're just like, we need to do this because the higher-ups literally hired us to do this, so we gotta do it, right? And that's kind of weird.
I mean, to an extent, you might have Virions that, literally believe that they are there to do good in the world. And you might have the Virion that's pretty much just like your standard politician, which is, I will make people happy in the short term and cares about the long term. Have
Virions.
So,
Ray Cal is a good example, right? Of a Virion who's really sketch.
Yeah.
Because I believe she's the main villain in one of the games. Argent? I think she's the villain in Argent, right?
She's one of the main villains in Argent. For a variety of reasons, and she certainly has had it's kind of easy to understand how she's had a hard time, where she's basically kind of like been directionless, because she basically has never received her marching orders and is constantly afraid that she somehow missed something or is screwed up in some way.
Yeah.
And is just increasingly desperate because of that.
But that's the point, right? Like she's evil not because she's a Virion. She's evil because she's this disgruntled person who's lost and angry, or is just panicked all the time. And that's really a personal thing, right? Like she chose to handle her emotions in a way that leads her to do bad things, and really that's her choice, right? And that's like part of that core ethos.
Yeah, that's how she deals with that.
Being evil, being good is really just an effect of how you choose to handle your own jank, or your own stuff, or your own feelings.
But
and really, it's a choice.
Yeah, but going back to those werewolves, going back to Karen and Jaeger for a second, and part of that is also just when we're talking about identity, we're also talking about the ability of people to change and grow, and how that's almost kind of like a necessity for a lot of people. So you have that happen with Karen and Jaeger in the storyline, where they do achieve their goal and become separate and have to find new roles for themselves in the world, other than just seeking out the solution to the problem. You have characters like Hikaru, who starts out as this martial artist, and then he kind of becomes this explorer. And part of that also ties into the whole villainy discussion that evil is not innate. Somebody who was a villain can be reformed, or vice versa.
Yeah, for sure. There was a big line. So Eric is a character that a large majority of players find very annoying and very frustrating to deal with. Not just mechanics wise, but his lore and his stories are that he's literally a snot-nosed kid, right? Who constantly just is annoying.
Yeah, he's kind of a 1% creep. At least starting out. He's very wealthy, and he's chosen a way that's kind of deliberately exploitive to focus his talents. But he means well, kind of.
No, but that's what Brad said, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people were like, I don't understand why this character exists, because all he does is be annoying, and he's really a bad character. And Brad ultimately said something along the lines of, well, the point of characters is that they change and they grow. Like, who knows what Eric will be in the next few games, right? Because characters do literally change and grow as the games progress. Biggest example probably being Magdalena, who starts off as this, like, naive person who is constantly at the whims of the will of this weird ghost that possesses her whenever.
Yeah.
And then over time, she just masters that, and she no longer is the slave to a ghost. Like, at some point in Eric's lifetime, maybe we'll see it, maybe we won't, but who knows? Maybe he'll turn into, like, the Merlin equivalent in Indines, right? Who knows, man? Like, what if he just starts off as this snot-nosed wizard kid and ends up being the most powerful mage in all of existence, the most wise and wise of wise men? Who knows? But that's the glory of Indines, right?
Yeah. Well, I know, and you might know a little, I don't know. But, so...
Stop teasing people, Julian. I was trying to avoid this.
Just, it's something I'm gonna have to watch doing. But no, we have plans for Eric. It just kind of hasn't been really fleshed out, so it's hard for me to talk too much about. But I kind of know where he's at point A and point B, and where he ends up at point, like, F. But I don't know where, like, D, E, or C are. So,
obviously, he starts his own children's school, and he becomes Professor X from the X-Men. That's the real answer. So you know what, Julian?
The Argent Orphanarium?
You know what, Julian? Yeah, maybe. But Julian, here's the real thing.
Okay.
We've ranted about Indians, we've ranted about the ethos of the world, but people have their burning questions. So let's take a short break, and we'll get to those burning questions in a bit.
July 4th weekend, Level 99 Games will be at Anime Expo in Southern California. Swing by our booth and play some Street Fighter Exceed. A special 7th Cross promotional poster will also be available. See you soon!
Why, hello, mutants and X-people. I prefer not the X-Men. I prefer the X-people. X-people.
X-Force is a good neutral term, unless you remember the 90s.
I prefer X-Gauge. Little Exceed joke over there. But Julian,
X-Factor was my first X-Men comic, actually.
How about X-Spouse?
No, it's hard.
No?
That would definitely be. There have been a number of ex-spouses over the years, but that would be tangenting too much.
Yeah. See, I don't want to call us the X Factor or our listeners the X Factor because everybody hates that. Not the comic series, but the mechanic in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3.
That's a divisive one. Yeah.
Yeah, and nobody likes it. But you know what everybody likes? Having their questions answered. So we've, again, placed a poll for all the questions in the comment section, in the description. We've actually asked a few people to send in some questions, and they have. So welcome to the Mailbag Extravaganza second half of this episode. We're going to be talking about some questions, and Julian has to answer them, because he is our captive prisoner, and he cannot leave.
Oh no, I'll never get out. How
You'll never get out.
How will I escape?
You will never escape. Here's the first question from Twy.
All right.
What is the backstory of the Malaphases? Is that how you pronounce that? I actually have no idea.
Malephaise is usually how I pronounce it.
No, Malephaise, right? But if there are multiple sisters, are they the Malaphases?
I would just refer to them as like the Malephaise sisters.
Okay.
But they could technically be the
girls?
Malaphases, like you have the Kennedys or whatever, but...
The Addams family, I guess. But yeah, is why are they all women? But that's like something I have to. Oh, I just realized they're all girls, huh?
Yes, they are. That's not something I can. I wish I could answer that better. It's something I probably should talk to Brad about. But the backstory.
Yeah. So wait. This question's not complete, right?
Yeah.
Has anyone ever resisted the thrall of a Malephaise artifact? What's the longest anyone has held out? And is the one character that is currently resisting, how long are they going to last?
Okay, so Malephaise by legend was an ancient god, an ancient demon god, who was slain long ago. And strictly speaking, he couldn't be slain permanently, but he could be torn apart and thrown apart all over. And those make up all the different 8 Malephaise artifacts, each of which is held by a different member of the what are called the Seven Sisters, or sometimes the Malephaise Princesses. And some of them have appeared in BattleCon. Lucida has popped up. Dolores is in the new Devastation as a promo.
Yes. Ray, who's the other arm?
The other
Ariel.
Ariel,
and of course Schecter, but
yeah.
I don't think she counts as a Malephaise just yet.
It's a question that's up in the air, because technically by all rights she is one. She's just not aligned with them.
Okay, so this is a big question, right? So is Schecter quote unquote fully transformed into a Malephaise sister the same way like a character like Dolores or Ariel are? It's just that she's not choosing to be part of their sister team.
Well, as far as resisting the artifact goes, it's one of the first things I actually got to talking to with Brad when we did Well of Souls was what. Of course, I can't get into the exact details, but what exactly the artifacts do to people. It's not like there's a certain point that you automatically a button or switch is flipped and you are different. It's very much kind of a slow process over time.
It's like a bad influence.
Yeah, it's like it's like a negative influence is the term I'd use. Over time. And so those sisters who are much older, like Sarah
Candid.
or Nabate's, Candid's somewhere in the middle.
Okay, and Candid's already pretty insane, right, at this point, and she's only halfway through it.
Well,
so.
She was somebody who kind of jumped in with both feet to some extent, as far as that goes. She wasn't. Without getting too far into it, she just kind of like when she got the powers, like, okay, this is great.
All right, I'm evil now. I guess let's do this.
Let's use this for my own benefit right away. So, as you get to some of the ones that I haven't been around as long, I'm trying to think of which one is.
Schecter's newest.
Yeah, Schecter's newest. And I mean, to some extent, they are trying to bring her on board, and one of the things that might be considered a little bit surprising is they actually want people who can resist it, because that means you're actually strong-willed and you're actually somebody who's worth being a member of their club, as opposed to somebody who immediately loses control and can't hold out for basically the long term, as they're practically immortal, as far as aging goes anyway. As far as the longest anyone has held out, Schecter's certainly the longest that we know of. But like
hasn't joined the club, so to speak.
Yeah, but I mean, even within the club, there's dissension, and how much any of them is purely indoctrinated isn't really. I mean, they all have their own goals, they all have their own notions, so they aren't always lockstep.
So let's move on to the next question. You can also choose whether or not you want to get a shout out. This person chose not to be shout outed. So any chances of BattleCon novel going over any of the events in the games? I believe this is what the Grand Chronicle is, right? Am I wrong? What is the Grand Chronicle, I guess, is the big question here.
It's more like a summary of all the stories. and to some extent the setting. So it's going to be going over things like what happened during the BattleCon game, so like what happens during all the war storylines and devastation storylines, and during the later Relic Hunters and Wanderers and Imperial and Argent, and a lot of other things besides. That's why, I talked about, I think before the podcast, about 7-card Slugfest. So we're looking to cover just about everything that's been a story, and some other things that haven't come up yet.
Disc Duelers?
Disc Duelers unfortunately did not have a story associated with it. It just has all the characters, it has no summaries or anything. So, unfortunately, it doesn't relate to something. It doesn't mean it couldn't be turned into a story in the future, but right now it's not on our list.
The King of Games takes over the world and turns everyone into discs. I don't know. All right. So, but is there any chance that we're getting a big lore? So essentially, the Grand Chronicle is a lore Bible, right?
Yeah.
But is there a chance that you'll write a novel, Julian, just for fun?
I mean, me and Brad have definitely talked about that kind of thing. I can't really say, we've not definitively sat down to do any projects, but Brad definitely wants to do fiction if we can make it happen. Some of it might be working with people outside of level 99. It's still very much up in the air because we've got a lot of plates spinning.
Some of the fan fictions that we've gotten are really good.
Yeah.
Like, have you read Substitute Trias by Durinkin?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, no, that's great.
It's beautiful every time. Okay, so next question. Dwi's back again. Dwi has a lot of lore-related questions.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's really interesting. We're gonna hear a lot from Twi, and these are the hard hitting questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how closely does the Minus world mirror the real world? Do doppelgangers ever try to be individuals? Do doppelgangers also copy wild magics of the humans they copy? How does evil Hikaru create his evil elements? So wait, I think I know the answers to these. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure. Go ahead.
Number one, the Minus world does not mirror the quote-unquote real Indines world. The Minus world is a plane that existed long before Indines did, and the Minus world is essentially just one of the oldest planes in existence, and it's basically about to die. So essentially it's basically a world that's nearest to the void of death, and all of its inhabitants have just stared into the void, and the void stared back, and they've been changed forever, is essentially how I just describe it, because that's how doppelgangers are made. Doppelgangers aren't like this weird species of people. They're created because they're so near the void of nothingness that they essentially can mirror things. I think that's how it works. So doppelgangers do try to attach themselves to individuals. I don't think any of them have tried actively replacing individuals. They just try to mimic the individuals in some sort of weird fandom kind of thing, like Sagas does for Severy, right? I don't know the answer to the wild magic thing. Maybe you can answer that. And how does evil Hikaru create his evil elements? Evil Hikaru cannot control elements, and his elements aren't evil. Evil Hikaru can only control evil. He just chooses to manifest his evil in the form of evil fire, which is literally just evil in the shape of fire for pure aesthetic reasons, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
So I'll go by these one by one. As you're correct. The Minus world does not mirror the real world. There are places that might have a bit of commonality, but other than that, it's not a direct copy.
It's not a mirror world. It's not like Bizarro Indines, right? That's not what it is.
No. Whether or not doppelgangers try and be individuals, well, I'll just say that we haven't really had any doppelgangers that are trying to be individuals yet. I'm not saying it couldn't. It certainly could. It certainly seems possible, but just about every one we've had is copying either somebody from the past or somebody in the present. Some of them do try and take over their counterparts' identities, but most of the ones we've seen don't. There is one, Gaspar, in theory, is taking somebody's identity, so I'll just say that. But it's not a character that we've really covered otherwise. So
yeah, and I think it's pretty clear to almost everyone that person is no longer the same person.
Yeah, Gaspar is not a perfect copy of the person he's copying by far.
Yeah, Gaspar definitely does not act anything like the person he's copying. So
no.
It's very clear. All right. So, do they copy the wild magics? That's a big question.
That I admit we haven't really gotten into that. I would say it's possible, but it's probably not necessarily consistent. So
Okay.
it may depend on how deep they go per se, or they might have their own talents that are like those wild talents, but not necessarily the same.
All right.
Yes.
Hey, how does Evil Hikaru create his evil elements? Am I correct?
I mean, he creates them like Hikaru does, except he's evil, so they're evil
But Brad
elements.
said my explanation's the best, and
It is, yeah.
the explanation I gave was actually Brad's explanation.
Fair enough. We can go with that.
Yeah, make it canon, Julian.
I would ask folks not to think too hard about Evil Hikaru.
Why not? He's the best character.
He is a great character, and I'm actually doing more with him than you'd probably expect.
Wow, more than a meme?
Yeah, where he is an actual character in some of the stories. So,
Wow.
well, it's one of the things I can do with kind of like the perfect hindsight of looking back at all these games and going back and detailing, storylines like War and Devastation. I can take characters didn't exist back then in terms of, the real world and put them in where they'd fit, in the actual fiction.
Oh, that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
like, maybe there was a Wanderer's character who influenced some events in War, but chronologically speaking, in the real world, that character didn't exist when we made War, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally, and everything is still in flux, but I will say I've used Wanderer's characters in War, so it's,
oh, wow,
yeah.
that was just me
Yeah,
pulling an
no.
example from my hat.
No, it's
Oh, wow,
kind
okay.
of like if a character fits the role I need, I will pluck them out.
It's the Jin. We all know it's the Jin. All right. Here's another question. Again, no name given.
Yeah.
Does technology clash with magic in the world of Indines? Or are there some who embrace and use both simultaneously? So correct me if I'm wrong, Julian, but in Indines, technology is a form of magic, right?
Yeah, they're pretty much they're pretty much not considered separate per se. Magic, you've got like technomancy, which is a form of magic, basically focused into a technological form. It's basically using magical principles but crafting it into working items that use mechanical principles combined with magical principles, or electronic as it might be. And you also have like artifacts, and artifacts are mostly like you're talking about like old technology, and that's mainly like with what Runica deals with, or what like Enderbit is made out of.
These are pre-Dragonic War technologies?
Or during Draconic War, yeah.
I see. Okay.
And those are kind of like the main forms, and of course you also have the Underlanders, who are a big part in Relic Hunters, and especially in like Imperial, who have their own technology that's in some ways more advanced than that of Indines. So
Yeah, they have computers.
yeah,
Indines characters do not have computers.
they-
Don't let them fool you.
they basically have a lot of like a lot of things that were lost because the dragons wrecked them on the surface.
That's a really big thing that I want to point out that the world is just about, is that it's a world where both magic and technology are so commonplace that there's no such thing as a division between the two of them, in the same sense that like you know how internet is just so prevalent throughout your entire life that if a thing had internet connectivity, you wouldn't even question it anymore. Like, here's my internet-capable blender, and then you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a thing, right? Like, isn't that essentially what Google House is, right?
Right.
And in Indies, it's kind of like that. Almost every human being is born with the ability to use magic, like almost everyone. So it's come to a point where like magic is such a normalized thing in the universe that like average Joe, like little snot-nosed kid Kenny can do something. Like Dennis the Menace, the kid, could literally have magic and he could use it, and you'd be like, you kids and your spells or whatever, and that would be a normal thing, right?
Yeah, and you have things like divine rituals, which anybody can do as long as you do them correctly.
Yeah, that's definitely true, because it's a transaction.
Yeah.
As cynical as that sounds, but yes, divine magic is purely a transaction.
And there's definite reasons for that, but much more mechanical than one might expect. Kind of almost like makes me think of, when you're going back into like really early human prehistory, if you look back at like really old religions, a lot of them are transactional, where it's like, I do this thing and therefore God rewards me for doing this thing. It's almost like less a lot of modern religions are much more strongly like faiths, spiritual. A lot of older ones were just like, if I do this ritual, we will get this thing. So it's kind of still in that mindset. Though there are certainly those who have studied and use it in a much cynical or scientific fashion, I suppose you would say. I think. Or just in general, I would say a lot of the folks maybe at like the Divinity College of Argent.
Oh, that's fair.
You probably have some true believers there, and you probably have some folks that are just like, okay,
Yeah, kind of like people who study law.
Yeah. Well, we do have a regulomancer who uses law for magic too. So
here's another one from Twy. Can Lim and Cherry ever be reunited in a single hale and hearty form? They were never separated, right?
No.
Like Cherry just turned into Lim.
Yeah, Cherry died and became Lim. So whether or not there could be a Cherry again, it's Indines. A lot of things are possible. Certainly when we're recently doing the crossover with Madara, and I didn't know whether they were going to use Cherry or Lim, and they eventually decided on Lim. And so when they are they're kind of like, it's kind of up in the air. I was thinking, like, if they use Cherry, do I want to worry about justifying that in the lore? If I can I? It's like, yeah, I can. I wouldn't say it's a possibility, but we'd actually have to have a story around bringing Cherry back if we wanted to do that. I wouldn't necessarily jump at it necessarily at the moment, just because I like Lim so much as a character, and I like the idea of growth.
You don't have to,
no.
Right? Like you could just make it so that Cherry, I don't know, like, it's just an illusion Cherry, or like Lim can just project a human form sometimes, right? Like,
yeah,
if she has mind-altering powers, you can literally just say that every time you see new Cherry, it's actually just Lim mind-controlling you into thinking she's Cherry, because Lim can do that.
Yeah, if you've played enough like fighting games, you'll have them like bring back an old character, and then come up with like a dream sequence or something to feature them in the story, even though that they were killed off long ago.
Or time travel, Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
Rough.
I'm just thinking of BlazBlue. My brain is turning into a pretzel, and I just need to stop on the head.
Please don't. Like, fighting game lore is crazy. Yeah. Indines lore started off as an RPG, so it's less crazy by comparison, right? It had to be a coherent world before we made it into a fighting game.
Yeah.
Here's the last question from Twy. Who is more powerful? A fully restored Malephaise or a resurrected Greyheart? Can a dragon can non-human characters or can non-generic characters acquire Malephaise artifacts? And can Kaons adopt forms that aren't humans? I can answer that last one. All Kaons have to be humans. There's no such thing as a Kaon who is not a human, because Kaon physiology makes it so that when they enter Indines, they are forced into the form that is most prevalent, or the quote-unquote dominant species on that planet or plane. And on Indines, it is currently humans. Maybe in the future it could be different, but currently it is humans. So all Kaons manifest as humans.
Yeah, Kaons can vary to some extent from the human norm, but yeah, they're at least basic physiology is probably going to be humanoid. If not their internal physiology, but their basic outward form.
Yeah, they look human at the very least.
Yeah,
right?
well, you've got
with maybe a tentacle or two.
Yeah, a tentacle. You've got people like Iria can definitely press the barrier to some extent, but overall, she's still at least.
She looks like just a weird cosplaying human.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, she looks like
that's what she is.
A freakish elder human, not beyond the means of a lot of the other weird stuff that we have going on, like homunculi. So.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so who's more powerful?
That is a tough question to answer, because I don't think it's really a matter of power levels per se. They're pretty much both divine figures. The question would be on what who gets gets the playground, who gets to actually declare where the battle's taking place, per se. Because if Malephaise gets everything that he's looking to achieve in, like, his resurrection, he's probably winning. If Greyheart just got a straight-up fight, he'd probably be on he'd probably be the one that wins out. So it's kind of a question of what terms are they actually meeting for battle on. So
so it's Greyheart versus Malephaise, and then both of them against Batman with infinite prep time.
Well, I've never been a fan of the Batman of the Eternal Writer's Favor, so I'd say Batman probably wises up and goes to get some friends, because he's probably not taking care of it on his own.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so can non-humanoids gain access to Malephaise body parts?
Well, we have already Lucida is an elven, who has...
Well, she's a humanoid. She's a humanoid. I'm talking like, can a random rat get the artifact? Can a sentient goat get the artifact? Like what's the predication of getting an artifact? Is it just sentience?
Well, they are basically like pieces of a god. They are frankly not that particular. So yeah, no, if it doesn't really... I'm trying to think if there are any species that would be right out. I mean, there's some that we haven't explored per se, but I would definitely say that it's certainly possible. So let's just say there are certain people in history, in Indines history, who have believed themselves. It's like, there's no way this can corrupt me, and they found out to their surprise that was not so. So
are you saying that? Oh shucks, I forgot whatever race freaking Demetras is. Demetras, I mean. What is he?
The Vom?
Dang it.
The Vom.
Vom. So are you telling me that the Malephaise artifacts are so powerful they can corrupt Voms?
I would say somebody thought that was a good idea at one point.
Rip.
Yep. And
Rip
not so
guys.
much anymore.
Okay, so Voms are now scared of one cursed thing at the very least.
Yeah.
All right. I believe that's all the time we have for questions. We're nearing like the 45-minute mark, or at least the 47-minute mark. And I do think it's time for us to cool down. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Mailbag. I do hope that all of you send some of your hard-pressed questions to the Google forum below, and surely we'll find somebody to answer them. Thank you so much, Julian, for being on the show. Is there anything you want to tell everyone? Like, something about the Grand Chronicle, something about your breakfast this morning? What?
I just want thank you, Marco, for having me on here once again. And I've just been really honored to work on the Grand Chronicle. Brad has given me a lot of
power. Ultimate power.
Responsibility in dealing with, in working on this, because he's, of course, divided between many different projects at the moment. And so I've been really honored to be able to work on it. And I look forward to everybody being able to get their hands on it when it comes out and see everything that we've been talking about. So. All
right. If Dajin doesn't end up dating someone, I'm going to be mad, okay?
We need a little more romance,
Yeah, we definitely need this old warlock genie sorcerer to date someone. I don't know. Maybe Korra and Dajin realize that they're age-old feud.
He has a fine-looking genie, I'd say that. So.
Yeah, he have purple skin. I'm still not really sold on the entire cowboy theme. so
I love it myself, but...
I mean, no. I love it too, but I'm not sure if that would register as, romantically attractive to many people. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope all of you had a great time. As usual, it has been me, your host, Marco DeSantos, also known as the Mechanic Critic, and with me has been Lore Master General himself,
Julian Kulik, also known as Arbco on the Discord.
Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget your special action, and thank you, World of Indines. Thank you, and good night, and happy gaming.
The new Level Cap podcast is produced by Level 99 Games. Join us next Wednesday for more design talk and shenanigans. Thank you for listening.